As biological creatures, we are wired to avoid pain and chase pleasure. The paradox of this is that in reality, you could say that the cost of attaining pleasure is pain. The cost of enjoyment is suffering. And that's just due to the zero sum nature of reality. If you believe that reality is substantial and does not equate to zero, then you may have the viewpoint that you can have a good life, an enjoyable life without any suffering, whilst avoiding all suffering. But actually, if you look at reality closely, you'll realize that um, actually every enjoyable experience you had to pay for through suffering. And if there was ever an experience which you had which was enjoyable, which you did not have to pay for in suffering, then someone else paid for it in suffering. It's the classic saying, no pain, no gain. You could also say the same thing by saying nothing is for free. Essentially, I'm not saying that you can't have an enjoyable life. You can, but it's impossible to have an enjoyable life without simultaneously having to bear the cross of suffering. It's just something that's inescapable. Um, and when one realizes that this is the truth, then you only really have, well, you have like two choices, but there's only really one intelligent choice. If one realizes that suffering along with enjoyment is inevitable, essentially, and you can't escape suffering, that means that the most intelligent thing to do is to choose to strive for something that's worth suffering for. If you're going to suffer anyway, you may as well suffer for something which is worth attaining. Do you get what I'm saying? Because you could essentially go for all the wrong things with all the wrong prizes, right? Um, and still suffer for it. You could not strive for anything and you'll still suffer for it. There'll still be consequences. So you either choose to strive for something that's worth it, essentially, and pay for the suffering in return for an enjoyment or pleasure or a reward which is actually worthy of that suffering. Of course, it will always be equivalent, but um, certain things are more worth it than others, right? So yeah, this one's a very short video. It's a very simple point, but I think it's something that people tend to overlook. And even if they do realize it, they tend to try and turn a blind eye. They still think, and this is essentially what really leads to a lot of corruption and like criminal behavior and this and that, is really and truly is people just trying to take shortcuts because they believe that they actually are shortcuts and there actually aren't any. There can be something which appears to be a shortcut, and you may you may get a lot of reward for a very low price in the short term, but then later on in the long term it won't stand the test of time. That's why a lot of like criminals and this and that, they may have like a good run for 5, 10 years where they're making way more money and they're getting way more enjoyment and this and that than the regular person. But then what happens after, they end up spending 10, 15, 20 years in jail. See, so it ends up correcting itself. There actually aren't any shortcuts, you see, so that's just the nature of the zero sum. Um, yeah. So really, you have two choices. Either you can give up trying to chase enjoyment and pleasure on these things, and as a result, you may actually not suffer as much. Or you can choose to um, choose particular things which are worth paying the price of suffering for, and bear the suffering, knowing that it will actually be worth it in the end, because you will be compensated for that price. So yeah, I think I'll leave that one there. Like, comment, subscribe.